if you already know that God has it predetermined whether or not
Uh-huh.
you're going to live.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he
Okay, so
does.
whatever you do, it's going to be in accordance with God's will.
Right, exactly. So
So
the thing is that our job as humans is not to know exactly what God's will is for our lives. Our job is to be obedient to God.
right. So if he already predetermined that you're either going to live or you're going to die
Hmm.
from if you are stricken with cancer,
Right.
for instance, then why would you take the steps that you think you would need to in order to get well by seeking out and get medical attention and get treatment? Why would that be necessary if God can just, I mean, cancer goes into remission naturally as well.
Yeah, it can. Um,
So,
and the thing is that
so it
first of
doesn't matter what you do, right?
well,
It's gonna,
everything that we do unto the glory of God. So a person that is sick and dying and decaying of cancer, God gets no glory in that. Because the first question that is asked is that, well, if God is such a good God, then why does he allow people to suffer and die?
mhm.
And if I'm just sitting back and not trying to get myself well, and I claim to be a Christian, then God gets no glory in that. But if I am taking the steps to get myself better, to get myself back to health, um, and if I do get back to health, then God gets the glory for that. Um, but as for just sitting back, that's just like if I cut my arm and it's getting infected. Um, Rationally, I'm not going to sit back and just say, well, God is going to heal it. It's like I, I want to make sure that I'm getting myself well. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my body.
Yeah.
Even when it comes down to my diet, we want to glorify God in our bodies because we are the living temple of God. So that's why I will go to the dentist. I will get my eyes checked and all of that stuff. Um, and at the same time, it's unbiblical for anyone to just get sick and say, Lord, just take this away from me. There's even a verse in the Bible um, where they talk about drinking wine to cure stomach ailments back in those days. That is an example of if you do get something like a stomach ailment, you can drink wine to make yourself better. Not to just sit back and say, hey, or to give 10 Hail Marys and, pray that it
Hmm.
just goes away.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just basically, God gets no glory in that.
So he gets glory for all the things that is good in the world, but not the things that we didn't cause, that is not good. For example, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, and kill. I mean, those seem to be natural phenomenon. I guess your view must be that God did make the volcano to erupt and destroy an entire city in this example,
Well,
or how
God,
would you view that?
God doesn't. Well, first of all, the world that we live in is a fallen world. We live in a fallen, sinful world, and as the story goes, we all know that this started back in the Garden of Eden, and ever since then,
Do
the
you believe
world.
that, by the way?
Yeah, yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
entire Genesis account.
I believe the entire Bible from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22.
Okay,
Yeah.
go on, go on.
But we live in a fallen, sinful world, and the world that was created before the fall of man, there wasn't any there wasn't any earthquakes, there wasn't any floods, there wasn't any volcanoes or anything like that. But since we live in a fallen world, and God did not intend for this world to be created to have the problems that we have now, that's why He sent His Son Jesus Christ down to reconcile man's sin to Himself. So therefore, when He does return, He's going to reestablish the earth back to where it was, uh, that we saw back in Genesis 1, to where there isn't going to be any sin, death, earthquakes, natural disasters, or anything like that. Right now, this world is currently under judgment. So, of course, now we're going to see a lot more earthquakes. We're going to see a lot more people die. We're going to see a lot more string of diseases and cancers and stuff like that. But then when Christ returns, those things will be eradicated from earth, and we will uh, we will be in the seat of Christ for eternity once he returns, or we'll be seated at his table.
Okay, this to me sounds like very much what the people who stand up with signs saying that the world's going to end. You know,
Right.
there's quite a bunch of them in America, as far as
Yeah, they
I'm
are.
concerned,
Yeah,
and
that's
they've told us that the world is going to end on several occasions,
right.
and that is what I'm hearing from you now. I mean, it is not, you are not correct if within. I mean, if this is a prophecy of some sort that you are proclaiming right now, that is going to be
Right.
fulfilled. It
Right.
needs to be fulfilled within a specific timeline. I mean, eventually there's going to be an eruption. We know
Right.
that from past experience. And there's going to be another earthquake somewhere, right? Because
Right.
we've seen these sort of phenomena in the past, so it would be reasonable to say that they might happen in the future as well. Now that we know actually that volcanoes erupt sometimes, and
Uh-huh.
due to the shifting of the tectonic plates,
Exactly.
there's going to be earthquakes, and
Right.
there's going to be probably quite a few natural disasters
Right.
in the future. But you're saying that they're going to come. Um, I mean, how do you know that this hasn't happened yet?
Well, first of all, because we still have sin on the earth and we still see evilness and wickedness taking place in this world. We're still seeing children born of cancers. I watched some video and I've seen some pictures on the internet of people in the Middle East beheading children.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
that shows me that we are far from from this earth that Christ has promised us
But
after He
you, but
returns.
you believe that nothing can happen that isn't in accordance with God's will.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can anything happen in this world that isn't in accordance with your God's will?
No, there's nothing in this world. Everything is in God's will. Now it's not God making it happen. It is
It's not
actually
God making it happen.
no, it's not God making it happen. God didn't make man to sin. Man chooses to sin. Like God doesn't make some man go out and kill another innocent person. That's not what God does. Man chooses that.
Hmm. Okay, and man did not choose to be born with cancer,
Right,
as far
correct.
as I know. I mean,
No,
the children who are born with blind and with several diseases, that they are going to be killed before they are like even turned one. You're saying that that is because of original sin.
right, exactly.
And how, in what way, in what way can you justify believing that this is moral?
What is moral? Children
The,
being
if
born with
if
cancer.
God, I mean, you're saying, are you saying that you did say that nothing that happens isn't in accordance with God's will? So everything that happens is, and so if a child is born with cancer, then that is in accordance with God's will, right?
Yeah, correct.
Sure. And so, how can you justify believing that this is moral? Is what I'm asking you, for God to
Well,
do that.
well, like I said, God is not giving the child cancer. See, since the beginning, in the garden, when God told man, go ahead.
So how is it caused then? If he willed it and it was so.
Well, because what he's going to do is that he's going to reconcile man back to himself. So when we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, and when a person who recognized their sin and they begin to put their faith and trust into Jesus Christ, God gets the glory for that. Now, as a Christian, I don't walk around and I wouldn't be saddened or I wouldn't be dismayed if I was to get a terminal illness like cancer. Um, Now, it probably would affect me emotionally because I would, start to think about my children and my family. But I know that there's a second life coming, so I wouldn't sit back and I wouldn't be so depressed if I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, because I know that it wasn't God's fault. It wasn't God ordaining for me to get cancer. Um, it's just a result of man's sin in this world, is the result of why I got cancer. So, and none of us are here
And
to,
I'm objecting to that entire
right.
system where the father's sins is carried on to the son and so forth. How can I remotely be responsible for what people have done in the past before I was
Well,
even born? I
well, the
mean,
thing,
people 2,000
right.
years ago, or in the 1800s, for example, they held slaves, and there was a whole bunch of problems with slavery in
Uh-huh.
America.
Correct.
How can I be held responsible for their sins?
Well, you're not going to be punished or judged for that. Now you will be affected by it. It's just like,
And
uh,
well, is it Adam? Is it the sins of Adam that I'm
yeah,
being held
exactly.
responsible for? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah, you're
in what
not,
way is that moral for me to be held responsible for what Adam did?
well, you're not being held responsible for it. Adam is going to be judged on how he transgressed against God. You're going to be judged on how you've transgressed against God. So there isn't, you're suffering because of Adam. Um, the results of Adam's transgression against God is what led to the problems that we have today in this world. Um, and so basically, that's why God sent the Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins, to reconcile us back to Him, to say, listen, you have to be born again. You have to put away your old sinful ways, your old sinful thinking. Put your faith in me and put your trust in me, and then you will be eligible for the eternal kingdom of God. Uh, because we know that this life is temporary. This earth is temporary. All of this stuff is not going to it's not going to be around forever. But
Hmm.
the thing is that the reason why I hold to that view versus the atheist view of, well, once you're dead and gone, then that's it. It's like atheists can't live that out. They can't live out there is nothing there's nothing else once you die. Like,
What do you mean we can't live that out? Because
well, the
as
thing
far as I
is,
know, as this is the only one and only life that I know I'm going to have,
exactly.
there is all the more reason to care about it. I mean, if why would you even care about what happens in this life? As long as you know that you are saved, uh, you will get to heaven, and there won't be any problems up in heaven. But I have all the more reason to care about the well-being of other people, as I know that this is the only life we know that we're going to have,
So when you
and it's that
die,
more precious because of it.
yeah, but when you die, who cares what happens to the people that you've been nice to? Once you die, it doesn't matter whether you go out and kill someone or whether you go out and feed somebody who's
Sure,
homeless.
it's in conflict with that person's well-being. That we have a preference, we have a biological preference to be alive.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because once they die and nothing, and there's nothing. They just go into the ground. You die, nothing happens. You go into the ground. I mean, it
And
seems pointless.
yet I want to live. I don't want anyone to kill me.
Right, exactly. I don't want
And
anyone to
why
kill
do
me
I
either.
have that? Why do I have that preference to live? If it's by the time that I'm dead, not gonna matter. Why do I even care about how long I live? Do
Yeah,
you think?
exactly.
Because I do care about how long I'm gonna live and how well off I'm gonna be.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to realize that if you're living a lifestyle to where you feel that things are subjective, that morality is basically subjective. It doesn't matter
I don't
if
believe that. I
so.
I,
So, do you
I
believe in an objective morality?
I believe that well, it depends on how you will define morality.
Well,
I see morality as the well-being of people.
okay,
And as we live in a physical universe, we can discover what is true and what's false, and we can discover
right.
there are truths about the consequences of our actions. That something is either right and wrong. And so, if we define the word morality as having to do with well-being, if that's going to be the foundation, and if we agree on that, then we can make objective assessments with respect to that. Like, for instance, if we agree that well-being is a good foundation for morality,
Hmm.
then killing another person is in conflict with that person's well-being, and it's therefore objectively wrong.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but when we look at,
And there's no gods required in that model, by the
okay,
way.
now if so, basically, if there is no God, there is no lawgiver, there is no one to basically set the standard of morality that killing is absolutely wrong, rape, pillaging, all of that stuff is absolutely wrong. Then what? Then who decides? Who do we look to say that killing is absolutely wrong? Because if you look at what is it,
We,
Germany back in the 40s, you look at Hitler back in the 40s.
yeah,
He said that the Jewish people are not good for society,
yeah.
especially the ones who are sick or lame or old. So
And he
since
went off and killed about 6 million of them. Yeah,
exactly, and he
and
went out and
that was in conflict with 6 million Jews' well-being,
right,
and so it
exactly,
was
but
therefore objectively wrong of him to do that.
yeah, but at the same time, who was it to say that that was wrong? I mean, that was his society at the time. Um,
So
he felt that that was wrong. He felt that Jewish people living in his society at the time, they were like a cancer. So he felt that he was doing society justice
yeah,
by
it's demonstrable to show that killing another person is in conflict with that person's well-being. That is entirely, I mean, we have a preference to live.
right,
Health is
exactly.
generally preferable to sickness,
Hmm.
and life is generally preferable to death. And
Right,
so we can make conclusions based on that, but they would be entirely situational. Now, in the case of Hitler, he went off and killed 6 million Jews, um, and every single one of those Jews had a preference to live.
right.
And so, by killing them, you completely destroy that person's well-being, basically.
But it doesn't matter.
You've
They were gonna
taken
die
away their
anyway.
freedoms, you've taken away their lives,
Yeah,
and
but
it is in conflict with their well-being, and that's where it is horribly wrong
okay,
to do that. I mean, we over here in Sweden, we have harsh laws against that,
okay.
those sort of things, of course. And as a secular nation, we believe that it is wrong, and everyone agrees on that. We have an agreement that says that murder is objectively wrong.
Are you
Uh,
do you support abortion?
um, yeah, I do.
Okay, so what's the difference between a life inside the womb and a life outside of the womb?
What are you actually killing when you're saying you? It's a determination of a pregnancy, right? An abortion. We
Right.
we we have through science come to conclusions about the state of the fetus that is why we have a limit. And after that limit, you are not allowed by law to have an abortion because
Okay, so
it is.
when do you think it is when do you think it is okay to take a fetus from the womb? At what point do you think it that up until what point do you think that it's okay to remove a fetus from a mother's womb?
I don't set those laws, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about what state the fetus is going to be in week 8, for instance, or week 18th. There's going to be a difference between week 8 and week 42 or whatever, and we can do our best to narrow it down to where we should draw the line. But
Okay.
it's a complex issue.
Well,
So,
for me,
but
I don't look at it as a complex issue. I look at it a child that is uh, a 1 week old fertilized egg to a 38, 39 week old fetus inside of the mother's womb. I view them the same. I don't see where a fetus or a fertilized egg that is only a week old is going to somehow turn into something else um, other than a human being, than a child. If you terminate that pregnancy at any time, you're not going to have a child. But if you don't terminate that pregnancy, the chances are, if there are no complications, that in 9 months that there will be a child, a human being that will be brought into into the earth. But the reason why I asked that question is that when I look at when I look at a person who is like Hitler, who says that only certain people deserve to live and only certain people deserve to die. When I see abortion, you're basically making that 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 same choice.
No, and it's a matter of rights. It's a matter of the rights of the woman carrying the baby.
Okay.
And if she wants to have an abortion and the technology is available, then that is within her rights to do that.
Well, Hitler had the technology to kill Jews who were, you know, who were sick and unable to take care of themselves.
But they,
And I
I
mean,
mean,
but
the
for him at the
fetus,
time,
once
it
it,
was his right. It was his right to do that in his society. It was his country. You know,
Hitler
no
was
one
never right. Hitler was never right to take the lives of 6 million Jews.
says who.
They says society, says us.
But
We
his
are the ones
society,
who make these determinations of what's right and what's wrong. But there are conclusions to be drawn. As I said, there are basic foundations. Life is generally preferable to death, and health is generally preferable to sickness. And we can make conclusions that are objective based on that.
yeah, but I don't understand how is it okay in one sense to take a life from the womb, which is completely separate from the mother.
The fetus doesn't have the automatic right to take use of the woman's body, and that's the difference. That is the
But
major difference.
yeah, but the thing is that the fetus is only dependent on the mother until he or she is able
Yeah, and
to.
that's where she decides what's going to happen to the baby. Yes,
Yeah, but the
she
baby is
did.
not. But the baby is not a part of her body. That the baby has a totally separate DNA and totally separate blood type from the mother. So it's not actually something growing inside of the mother like the appendix or anything like that. The baby is not an appendix. The baby is
Sure,
just being temporarily housed inside of the mother until it is developed enough to enter into the world.
sure. And where we actually draw the line for where abortion is okay versus where it isn't. It you know it's a process. Pregnancy is a process of something that is called a fetus becomes
Hmm.
something that we call a person,
Right.
right?
So when does a
Uh,
baby become a person?
so at what state?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a hard question. We can do our best, as I said. There we can look at. There's a vast difference between week 8 and week 18th,
Right.
and we can work our way and do our best to narrow it down to where we need to. I mean, between day 2 and day 3, there's probably not going to be enough difference. We can, but we'll look at as we look at the entire process of pregnancy from month 1 to month 9. There's going to be a vast difference, and we can try to be as specific as we can to set those laws,
Okay.
and that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
And
but yeah, but like I said, it goes back to to the subject of objective morality. Is it's I know why abortion is wrong because it takes life that is inside of the mother's womb. And I also look at that as equal to someone um, who kills a person who is maybe disabled. A person who is disabled. If I see a guy rolling down the street in a wheelchair, and I say, well, look at that poor guy. He can't contribute to society, and I go and kill him. They're going to throw me in prison for the rest of my life.
mhm.
But
You could
what?
say, okay, let me phrase this in another way,
Right,
to maybe we can unwrap the problem we're having with this
right,
issue.
right,
Um, um, okay, the fetus has a right to live. The
right.
difference is that the fetus doesn't have the right to take use of the female's body. Do you understand that? So there's a
So who put the
conflict
fi- who?
between two people's rights.
Okay. Um. All
And
right. So does a child have the right to take use of the mother's money and breast milk once that child is born?
what do you mean an automatic objective right to do that? I don't know.
Exactly. So what is the difference between the right and the
There are other ways to feed a small infant than breast milk, though.
right? So what is the difference between a child that is 18 weeks in the womb depending on the mother for nutrients to survive and to continue to
It does no
progress.
lo yeah, it does no longer take use of the woman's body. It does not. The life of the fetus is not contingent upon it on the mother's body. Um, Once it exits the womb, you wouldn't be allowed to kill the person, of course, and by the end of a pregnancy process, you wouldn't also be allowed to do that because it's a major health risk to both the woman and the child.
Okay, well, how many? Okay, well, I won't ask that question. I'll just ask another one.
Sure.
Um, when it comes to okay, whose right was it to have the baby? Well, when was it the woman's right to choose the person that she decided to take to her bedroom? Was that her choice or was that someone else's choice?
That was, consent to sex isn't always consent to pregnancy. And,
Uh, Go ahead.
a consent to pregnancy isn't a consent to remain pregnant.
So, okay, yeah.
And in some instances, the woman gets pregnant as a result of a rape situation. And so,
Yeah,
would you
but a
say
rape.
that abortion? Um, uh, would you allow for abortion in that specific situation where a woman has been raped?
Well, at that
Based
point,
on,
at
yeah,
that point, then uh, that's when I believe that it is now up to the woman, and it is up to the doctors, and it is up to society to determine, or the laws to determine what happens in an extreme situation like that. But since
what
that,
right? Sorry,
I'm sorry.
what right has society to decide something that is a health issue to the mother, to the potential mother? What
Well, when
right?
it comes
What
to the
right?
term, well, when it comes to the terms of pregnancy, I don't think that some woman who goes out and she's having unprotected sex with a guy, knowing that her result could end up in a pregnancy. I don't think that she should just be able to just walk into a building to terminate a pregnancy because she was irresponsible. I totally disagree with that because it's just like if I'm irresponsible with a gun and I go out and I shoot someone because I'm irresponsible with a gun, people aren't going to say, well, that guy shouldn't have been in the way. He should have moved when he saw, Alton running down the street with a gun. I have no right to take anyone else's life.
But
Um,
what, sure, but what you're doing is you're telling a woman basically what she can and can't do with her body.
well, I'm not telling her what she can and can't do with her body, but what
You're
I'm
saying
saying
that
is that
society should have the right to decide what a woman can and can't do
no, that's not.
with her
That's
body.
no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in the case of a rape situation, it's not society telling the woman exactly what she should do with her body.
Now
Now,
you said that if a woman has unprotected sex and the result is a pregnancy, then she should not be able to go to a healthcare center and get the fetus removed.
yeah, exactly. Because number one, she's not doing anything to her body. She's now doing something to the body of that child, that separate person that is growing inside of her body. Now, if she knew that that was going to be a result of her irresponsible act, then maybe she should be more cautious next time.
And
You know,
what if she, let's say she uses precautions, she
right?
takes pills and she uses condoms, whatever,
Yeah,
and the result is the result is a pregnancy. Let's just say that because that happens. We know that
right.
happens on
Exactly.
occasion. So the woman has now done what she can to be
Okay.
precautious,
Right.
and yet the result is a pregnancy. So now you have basically said that the society has the right to say that she has to remain pregnant even though she doesn't want to.
Well, first of all, the thing is like I stated before. Number one, uh, we live in a fallen world, and our actions can will determine our actions can affect other people. Now, me as a Christian, before I got into my faith, I didn't, I use sex for pleasure. Okay, now sex is not used to stimulate your senses or anything like that. Sex was ordained. Sex is ordained for a man and a woman, a married man and a married woman, to enjoy each other, not to go out and to spread and give their bodies to anyone, to just any person that they feel like that they want to. So when you take a certain act and you pervert it, then you're going to have consequences. So when God sets down a certain law of how we should conduct ourselves, and we say, "Forget you, God, I'm going to do this my way," and then when consequences happen, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves, because sex is not instituted for people to just go sleeping around with each other.